Kahari, can I have a okay. Hello, my name is Dr. Olivia Moses, and welcome to Wellness Live. We are here to talk about health, and this is the first Wellness Live of 2026. So, thank you so much for joining us. This broadcast is brought to you by Loma Linda University Health's Department of Risk Management. Now, with that being said, we have a very important topic today, and it's everywhere. How many of you have heard of protein? That's everyone, at least these days. Protein is everywhere. The emphasis on protein is in our grocery stores, on our televisions, in podcasts. This idea of getting protein, getting enough protein, getting more protein is all over the news. We have products being seen in the market, everything from adding protein to bread to even protein water. So while we are thinking of in January 1, a lot of us thinking about weight management and maybe changing our diet, we wanted to talk about this very hot topic. And we have a really great speaker to talk to you about just that. Her name is Dr. Rita Amen. She is our very own weight management dietitian in the Living Whole Wellness program here at Loma Linda. And she has a fantastic presentation for us to talk about the myths and what to believe when it comes to protein. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Rita Amen.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much, Dr. Moses, for this amazing introduction. And I agree with you that the topic of protein has been on everybody's mind, and especially with the new year, it's like, hey, let's get started with it. So I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited to clear the field about what is the myth, what are some facts, and so I'm excited to get started here. Let me go ahead and share my screen with everybody. Wonderful. All right. I see my screen just okay. Okay, so without further ado, the topic for today is going to be the myths and facts of protein. So just a small introduction of what we should be expecting today. We are going to understand the role of protein in the overall health and identify some common protein myths, especially in the wellness culture, and we will review some evidence-based facts and will apply some of the protein guidance to our diverse population and focus on protein needs. And then we'll sum it up with some takeaway points that will allow us to apply what we will encounter today in everyday life. So now the main question is we will always want to understand is what is protein? So protein is one of the three macronutrients that we encounter every day, which include the fats, the carbohydrates. So protein is that macronutrient. It is made up of amino acids. We need it for structure, repair, and regulation of the human body. And it is required throughout the lifespan, anywhere from being infants up until the aging process. So the role of protein in the body is that it builds and repairs muscles and tissue. It also supports our immune function. It's essential for hormones and enzyme productions. Not only that, but it does help with satiety and blood sugar regulation as well. So these amino acids that supply this immune system to form the antibodies that allows us to fight any infections or bacteria. So it makes our immune system a lot stronger. So it remembers the next time we get sick, for example. So the proteins is very, very important in our day to day. Now, as we've talked about, protein is a hot topic. Protein in the wellness culture is often marked as the most important macronutrient. It is common in any weight loss programs. Anytime you think about, hey, I want to follow a diet, I want to start working out, protein is our go-to. It is frequently overemphasized and often misunderstood. So the common myth that we kind of hear about is that more protein is always better. Now, what we don't know is that excess protein does not equal better health, and the needs tend to vary across the age group. So it varies by age, by health status, and also by level of activity, whether we're physically active or we live a sedentary lifestyle. All of that makes a difference in how much protein we need. Not only that, but very high intakes may displace other nutrients, meaning that it may not be what it may interfere with nutrient absorption. Now, the fact is, adequate protein does in fact matter. So, insufficient intake may lead to muscle loss. And also, it's important for aging as our metabolism changes and our muscle also changes, in other words, in our recovery as well. So what we want to take away from all of this is that balance is key. Now, the other myth that we may have heard about is that you can only get protein from animal-based products such as meat, eggs, and dairy. In fact, protein is in every single food product, almost like, let's say, plant-based proteins. So like lentils, soy, beans, nuts, and seeds, those are also excellent options. So they are in fact not only in animal-based products. However, some plant-based proteins, you might know them as incomplete proteins. So if you've heard of that word, incomplete protein, what that means is that it does not contain all of the essential amino acids. Now, our body naturally makes some proteins, but some other proteins, we have to get them from food sources. So when those incomplete proteins, they're like we're missing something. But honestly, we can still get them from plant-based products when we combine different food groups, and we'll see that in just a minute. So many plant foods, in fact, also contain all of the essential amino acids, and variety across the day meets those needs that we may think, oh, we're not going to get them because not all of the plants have amino acids. So the other fact is that plant proteins are effective even if incomplete protein. So again, we want to do a variety of protein sources because that variety does have different amino acids. And so some naturally complete proteins include tofu and edamame, quinoa, buckwheat. To form that complete protein that we were just talking about, we can combine different food groups. So for example, rice and beans. That is a common food item in a lot of the homes, especially our home, where rice does have a missing amino acid that when combined with beans, it creates a complete protein. Other examples is peanut butter on whole wheat bread or hummus with pita bread. You've heard of those. Not only that, but lentil soup with grain crackers. You've gotten some on a wintry day, some soup, you combine it together. Again, we can form that complete protein and we don't have to rely on any other sources. So it becomes really important when we are trying to form a correct meal. But the other myth that we always hear about, well, I heard that protein can cause kidney damage. And until now, we always think about that's the case. So it's a common concern, especially in the wellness conversations when we have it with each other. And that myth came from the concept of it's often generalized from the idea that there is kidney disease or kidney cases. So what we want to see is that protein, as a matter of fact, for healthy individuals is actually safe. It does not cause harm for up to a point. Now, if there is, let's say, an underlying health condition and we're taking in a lot of protein, that is a concern. That's when we shouldn't do that. But in healthy individuals, protein intake up within the recommended amount shows no harm effects on the kidneys. So from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and even in the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, where they looked at some meta-analyses where high protein intake does damage kidney or impair the function, and they found no significant evidence. But it is a concern if there are any pre-existing kidney diseases or kidney conditions or any other health effects. So it's always advised to consult or have a medical guidance when there is a condition that exists and we are trying to manage our eating patterns or even being on a diet. So now I hope that cleared that aspect. Now let's visit another myth. The other myth is that protein is only for athletes. So the fact is that protein needs exist regardless of exercise. Even those who are sedentary still require protein. However, again, the protein needs are going to vary, and we'll see that in just a minute. So protein is for everyone. It does support daily functions and repair any damage that we've encountered throughout the day. It's also critical or important during illness for recovery, aging, and stress. So adequate protein intake, or the concept of protein being for everyone, also can prevent muscle loss, which is known as sarcopenia in older adults. But those needs will vary as we are aging or we are healing, or we may be trying to lose some weight. Now here's another myth. Eating protein makes you bulky, or more protein equals more muscle. Is that true? Now let's visit some of the facts. So the fact is that yes, protein does build and repair tissue. It does, and it is involved in muscle synthesis. So what we know is that the body uses certain amounts of protein to make muscles or to provide muscle synthesis at once with an amount of 25 to 30 grams per meal. But any excess protein, it's not actually stored. So not stored as a muscle, but in fact, it is turned into energy or fat. So having the right amount is emphasized again. We need what is our body requiring us to have per day, and we want to stay within the recommended amount from the dietary guidelines for all Americans. So adding bulk or building muscles requires specific exercises like resistance training or endurance training, but not just high protein consumption. Now here's another myth for you. Timing matters more than total intake. It's a popular belief, especially whether we are about to work out or we have just finished workouts, but it's mostly post-workout windows. And it's often overstated in wellness media. So if you've heard about individuals who are saying, oh, I'm going to have a protein shake right after I work out. This is the most important. This is what I needed. But what we want to address is that daily intakes matters most. Total daily protein and quality intake is essential, especially when you have just worked out. So even distribution of protein throughout the day can support muscle protein synthesis or building of the muscles. So what is that relationship, and what does the guidelines tell us? So when we looked at the dietary guidelines for Americans, they have looked at the work, and they have found the evidence, and even when reading other articles, we found that protein intake during exercise, especially like regular exercise or regular resistance and endurance training, is beneficial to build those muscles or to create that bulk that we have thought about. So randomized clinical trials show or tell us that intake up to approximately 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight does improve muscle building, strength gains, and also preservations of lean mass. So there is that helpful benefit of that protein intake. But again, we want to create an even distribution throughout the day. And it's not so much taking it in that moment. So the protein supplements, again, is that a myth or is that a reality? So it's the fact is it's not required for most people. It is actually seen as convenient, but it's not superior to foods. So quality and tolerance will vary by different individuals and different exercise regimens and even different routines. So now, before I go on to talk further, I want to know if you have any questions and if there are any answers I can provide to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amen. That was a lot of great information. And if you are watching us live to our audience, go ahead and type your questions in so I can ask Dr. Amen live. So, a couple questions have come in, Dr. Amen.
Yeah.
One of them is around too much protein. And you kind of mentioned um, too much doesn't necessarily matter, but if you have kidney disease or pre-existing kidney disease. Now, if someone is doing protein shakes, is drinking protein water, is buying the protein bread and eating the meat, and so is there such thing as too much?
You actually, that's a very, very excellent question. And yes, there is actually such thing as too much because it can overwork our kidneys, eventually leading to kidney damage. So that's why we want to stay within the recommended allowance per day, which we will address in the second half of this presentation. So to answer the question is yes, there is too much of that.
So why do you think this big emphasis on protein all of a sudden? Or is this just a fad where sometimes, in the diet industry, there was some people might remember it was all fat. We were focused on fat and low fat. Then it was all on carbs. And it seems like now we're going into protein. What is it about protein, and is this trend here to stay?
So this is it's a fad. It's one of those if we want a quick fix, we often try and find an easy way out. And the fad is like, yes, protein does help with weight loss. And again, we'll address that in just a minute, but it does help with increasing satiety. So it allows us to stay full. So when that happens and we restrict other calories or we restrict other macronutrients, your body will try to compensate for this calorie deficit and lack of nutrients. So we will eventually lose weight. Yes, it does work. But realistically, we want a dietary pattern that is well balanced. So we don't want to focus on one macronutrient while forgetting everything else. And also don't forget that variety of different food groups, like variety of proteins, variety of fats, variety of carbohydrates, provide us a balanced nutrient intake, which are critical for daily functions. Each food category has a unique function in the human body. And so it's one way to kind of create a quick fix. So it's there for now, but it's again not a long-term plan that we want to go on. But it's overly emphasized because it does work for the moment.
Right. Another question that has come through, and thank you for that great answer. I'll read it directly. If someone is feeling tired or frequently has low energy, could protein intake contribute? Now, I'm going to piggyback on that. I think that's a lot of people's concern. Well, if I turn vegetarian or if I cut out, some of the meat I'm eating, I'm going to have these effects that I want to avoid. So, what would your answer to that be?
So it's all about balance. There's multiple factors that could contribute to the person being exhausted. Of course, if you haven't eaten or consumed any food for the last couple of hours and you just consumed a large protein item, yes, that's a natural physiological response that we will start feeling fatigued or tired. So it's about balance. It's having that balance categories where I'm eating the correct portions across the day or even distribution is going to make a big difference. And actually, those who have those balanced meals, even if they do have plant-based protein, they're actually going to have more energy because their body is capable of knowing when to produce certain proteins and certain enzymes and certain nutrients throughout the day versus eating everything at once in that just one moment.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Dr. Amen. And again, if you are in our audience watching us live, go ahead and type your questions and we can ask Dr. Amen. So, Dr. Amen, why don't we get to the second half of your presentation?
Let's do it. Let's do it. So let me share my screen one more time. Okay. So this is just a big piggyback on the questions that were just asked by everybody. So the question comes around, it's like, okay, so if there are some myths, if there are facts, and if adequate protein is so important, the question comes is how much protein do we actually need, or how much do I need? So there's two different terminologies that I would like to start before I give you that number. So there is a term that's called the recommended daily allowance. So that number is actually given to us by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and even the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, is to prevent deficiencies based on the nitrogen balance, and loss of lean body mass. So to maintain a good muscle function and to consume our adequate intake per day, or our daily allowance, the recommended number is 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight. Now, the second term we may have heard is in forms of a percentage. So that is given to us in the term of known as the acceptable macronutrient distribution range. So that specific term describes the nutrient adequacy and reducing chronic diseases. So in other words, is what is that percent of my daily caloric intake that should come from protein specifically? So that number ranges from 10 to 35% of total energy. That means not all of our meals should be just protein, and not all of our meals should be just carbohydrates. Actually, again, we go back to that term balance. But of course, again, higher needs for older adults are recommended, and even those who are considered to be active individuals. In other words, individualization of recommendations is essential for everybody. So just recently, in the last 2 weeks, the Dietary Guidelines for Americans just published the recent recommendations that are for the years of 2025 to 2030. And these nutrient recommendations are presented to us in what is called the inverted food pyramid. So the inverted food pyramid shows us the protein and dairy and healthy fat intake in the upper part of the pyramid. And then on the right side, we will see vegetable and fruit intake. And then it's in a cone where refined grains are at the bottom along with whole grains. So this inverted food pyramid emphasizes nutrient-dense foods, whole foods. So in other words, real foods, and that's the slogan that is known as, and reducing processed carbohydrates and prioritizing gut health. But placing high quality proteins up on the top with healthy fats like avocados, nuts, and seeds. But again, you can see that over there, there's chicken, there's meat, but the concept of plant-based food still gives us the complete proteins that we need. High meat intake can cause other health conditions, for example, like a heart condition, heart disease. And again, if we focus on just meat, yes, that's when the health problems will emerge. And then again, we will see that sugars are recommended to be eliminated. So with that relationship, we want to address the question that again was asked earlier. It's like, how do we want that in weight management? Or what's that relationship when it comes to protein? Can I lose weight if I'm just on a protein diet? We will go to any diet that's going to give us that weight loss, especially if we've tried everything. So is protein the answer? Now, based on that, the Scientific Foundation for Dietary Guidelines for the Americans that was just published, there is a findings or studies actually that looked at the effect of protein intake of 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight. And how is that going to help us? So when they examined that higher protein intake side on weight management, and is that going to provide us the adequacy in healthy adults, they saw that, okay, based on populations that we've studied who are overweight and obese, who followed still a caloric deficit, but still maintained a high protein intake, versus a smaller studies where they looked at individuals who have a stable weight. What was that like if they followed it for a duration of anywhere from 12 weeks to 2 years? So about 67% reported significant improvement in at least one weight-related outcome. For example, greater fat loss, preservation of lean body mass, or improved weight loss maintenance. So there is a benefit to taking in or basically eating a specific amount of protein when we are attempting to lose weight. But again, we don't want to overdo it. As of right now, there is no adverse effects when we are eating that specific recommendations of protein. So the conclusion is interventions of increasing proteins through nutrient-dense food does provide protective benefits, or in other words, helpful benefits in one of the outcomes when we are looking at weight management. How does that help? What's that relationship like? So protein intake does increase satiety, which in other words redirects our metabolism to work and helps us burn fat so we start losing weight. And it's not a standalone solution. I mean, we can't just say, okay, I'm going to follow a protein diet and that's going to give me that weight loss for a long period of time. There is more to that, and we do have to work out, and we do have to be more invested in eating a balanced meal once we start achieving that weight loss that we were looking at. So what food options you may choose to help with this weight loss, or to kind of understand the relationship between protein and weight management. So products like legumes, pulses, nuts, seeds, and soy products is a great plant-based pathway to meet those protein needs in order to work on the weight loss. It does supply that fiber that we're looking for, which is the key factor to weight management. It is what helps with satiety control. It does provide magnesium. It does provide phytonutrients. So plant-based sources are important. From the dietary guidelines of Americans, they looked at also some short-term randomized clinical trials, and they showed improved insulin sensitivities when eating plant proteins. Again, particularly soy, and if replacing refined carbohydrates and added sugars. So we see far more benefits than just the word weight loss. But the only gap that someone may be concerned with when following a plant-based diet is, I'm not going to have the B12, I'm not going to have iron, I'm not going to have zinc, iodine, or calcium. But it's actually addressed through fortified food and supplementations, and that's when it is okay. So in other words, plant-based foods are excellent options. But you may ask me, well, what else can I eat? I'm not just going to eat legumes and nuts. What are some recipes? What are some items that I can include in my own home? We actually have in our living hall department, we have a website that is rich and full of recipes and information that can give us that complete protein we were talking about, that will meet our protein needs every single day. It will boost our energy. It will provide that weight loss that we're looking for, of course, with management. So scan that QR code and it will take you to meal plans like breakfast or complete meals, if you will, or drinks or entrees, kid friendly, some salads, some sandwiches. And they don't take a long time. They're actually quick. So they're very convenient for the working individuals, for our employees, for even families. And this can be a family event. So for example, if we looked at black beans and tofu, which is a nourished bowl, we look at black beans and tofu, or brown rice stuffed portobello, eggplant lasagna. Those are delicious meals that we can have just right in front of us, right at home. Other examples that provide a complete meal is pasta with artichoke. Honestly, that's one of my favorites. I love pasta, but I want to integrate it in a balanced way, so I can do it that way. It's also cultural specific. So if you like Indian food, look no further. Indian spiced veggies with lentils. I mean, that's just delicious and it's colorful. Also, black beans and sweet potatoes enchiladas. It's so delicious. It's so nutritive, and you don't have to go anywhere. Just look on our website and you'll find colorful meals that you can take with you to work, that you can go back home to, and you can just heat up or eat like a salad. So whatever it might be, protein, we can accommodate it through a diverse culture, and it will still have every single nutrient that we are looking for. So some key takeaways is that protein myths are common in wellness culture. So we have to verify with evidence. We have to say, what is the evidence saying? What is research telling us today? We can't believe everything we hear. Too much of a good thing or quick fixes should be an alarm in our minds, say, hey, we got to look at something better. Quality and combinations is essential. Food first approach support long-term health. If you have an underlying health condition, always consult a dietary specialist or your primary care doctor to help with planning out a meal that is nutritious for you. The dietary guidelines for Americans from 2025 to 2030 reaffirms the macronutrient intake, especially with total energy of 10 to 35% of our diet. Evidence indicate that higher intakes within the recommendations of 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight thus support maintenance of lean mass and metabolic health. And those who are physically active, again, there is an upper limit of 1.4 to 1.6. So again, we don't want to overdo it. We can still meet our daily needs of protein with plant-based foods. High meat intake does cause heart disease, and it does contribute to other metabolic health conditions. So with that, I am ready to answer some more questions. I hope you've enjoyed this, and it's been a pleasure presenting this topic to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amen. We do have some questions that have come through. So here's one, and actually this combines another hot topic in the news lately is the microbiome and also inflammation. So the question basically, can improved protein or protein in your diet improve those two things?
So yes, because so depending on, of course, the protein type, but again, and a lot of the protein options or plant-based protein option we mentioned, like lentils and beans and soy, those are extensively rich in fiber. And fiber does help improve gut bacteria or the gut microbiome. And in that, that's a whole hot topic that we can maybe address another time. But it does create a positive environment, especially in our gut, which directly actually correlates with positive health outcomes. So yes, to answer the question.
So we only have time for two more questions. So one question is, if I'm concerned about my protein, you said make sure I talk to my medical team. Who do I talk to, and what kind of questions should I ask?
Yes, so you can talk to, I mean, your primary care physician, or you can talk to the dietitians. We can plan out a meal plan that accommodates your current health condition. For example, if there's kidney damage, okay, or if there's diabetes, or if there's any sort of creatinine clearance, or if you have anything related to your filtration, your kidney filtration rate. Ask your doctor, how is my kidney health? How is my overall labs? Do I have heart conditions? Do I have fatty liver disease? Those are things we can address together when we are putting a meal plan for you, because too much of anything can actually cause the opposite effect of what we want. Again, high protein intakes over the years does get converted into fat. So we don't want to take more than what our body allows us or what has been recommended to us. So excess protein does get converted into fat. So those are some of the questions we may want to ask.
Perfect. Now, our last question is, what recommendation would you make to someone who wants to improve their overall protein intake? Where
Yeah.
should they start?
Start talking to a dietitian. We can look at that. We can talk together about that. But one way to focus is include variety of protein options with every meal. So just a general recommendation, if you are looking at beans, half a cup to 1 cup, start there. Look at some variety of color when you are creating a salad, for example. Do I have you can create a 5 bean salad or five bean soup. Create a whole grains, add that to your soup or salad. So start with color. So choose that, and slowly you will understand that, hey, there's a lot of nutrients in variety of food groups that does contribute to my protein intake. That's a one great way to boost that aspect of your eating. Also, some nuts. Handful of nuts every day will improve our protein quality of choice as well. So you can choose walnuts, you can choose almonds. You'll get not only the proteins, but you'll also get some anti-inflammatory benefits and some fiber.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Amen, for being here, for giving us such great information. And we actually know a place to start. And so thank you for your time. And I
Uh,
want to thank you all for your time here, our audience. Thank you for joining us here for Wellness Live. And if you're watching us on demand or live, we just want to thank you for trusting us with having sound, evidence based wellness information for you every month. So now I want to invite you to our February 26th Wellness Live. We are here every month and we would love for you to join us. So, with that, I will say goodbye for now and we look forward to seeing you next time. My name is Dr. Olivia.